So I finally reached my destination, Vastervik, Sweden, where I was meeting a client, the reason for my trip. While in the UK, travel for work was for essential purposes only, the Poles and Swedes had a different approach. Don't fall foul of the prejudice of judging one country's particular approach to the crisis simply because it is different from your own. I was by now seriously wondering about the reliability of Mr. Ferguson's mathematical computations and his monstrous 500,000 number, which was the key reason the UK decided to part company from Sweden, whose policy they had previously been following.
Where on earth did 500,000 come from? I would love to understand better, and perhaps I've given myself another little project there, where they plucked a 500,000 deaths figure from. You know, a lawyer in those circumstances is far more likely to paint the worst case scenario because it's far better. I mean, let's just take the analogy of a merchant sailor who's got a precious cargo, and he wants to know, he's asking a meteorologist what are the likely weather conditions between the home port and the destination, yeah? And is the meteorologist going to say, well, this may be the situation, but you don't know with the weather, it's going to be flat, calm all the way, no problems, you're safe? Or is he going to say, well, there are some certain charts I've looked at and certain meteorological charts I've examined, there may be some rough weather just outside the Bay of Biscay, and you have got the Atlantic, and that could exacerbate things. You don't know with the weather. Last year we saw, you know, out of the blue, Hurricane Bertha, whatever it is, and nobody anticipated it. So so in those circumstances, the meteorologist is going to tell the merchant sailor, well, there could be some serious issues along the way, there could be a gale at least. It could be calm. I mean, currently, sitting here with you, the charts look good. So I can't help but think that the poor old medical experts in that Cobra meeting, staring at their papers and avoiding the Prime Minister's gaze, can't have helped themselves in terms of their professional reputations and the dangers of being accused of being negligent. What other choice did they have but to paint a kind of a semi-Armageddon scenario so that they couldn't be held massively to account? I mean, goodness knows if they'd, estimated a very low figure and then it had been really rather huge, they'd become pilloried in the press, their neighbours would have thrown bricks through their windows, their reputations as professional medics would be in tatters. You can see why they gave the advice that they did, and they must have all have been aware that there would be a lockdown based on a 500,000 figure, such that no one would ever know the true threat. So they'd never be hauled up in front of a judge for medical negligence, because they'd simply be able to say, well, it was going to be 500, but fortunately the government saw sense and put in extreme emergency measures. It's a no-brainer.
It occurred to me that the medical professionals were just like those in my own profession. We lawyers are often paranoid and give pessimistic advice to our clients for fear for being sued for negligence if we overcook it.
And it reminds me of a story, an anecdote, which is there are two guys in a jungle, and one of them whips out a horn and he blows on it very loudly. The other one jumps up startled and looks at his mate and says, what on earth did you blow that horn for? And the first guy says, well, to keep the lions away, duh. To which his friend says, well, there are no lions in this jungle. The first chap with the horn responds with a smug grin, exactly.
Maria had initially invited me for dinner at her house, but her midwife told her that during pregnancy this was risky, and so she did the reasonable thing and decided to follow the advice. So the plan changed, and we met for lunch outside instead. You say that a famous celebrity died last week and he was 50.
51. Yeah.
Can you tell me the story? What was reported about him in the press? Who is he? What was his...
No, he's been on TV doing like chat shows and also doing a lot of radio. I'll try to Google it myself, just trying to work out if there were any other hidden
medical conditions.
Yeah. But I've not been able to find anything. And I've asked around and people have been talking about it, but nothing's known.
What's his name?
Adam Alsing.
Adam Alsing.
Adam, as in Adam Alsing.
And he definitely died of COVID-19, did he?
Yeah.
Without any other underlying medical conditions, and he was 50.
Yeah. But maybe he did, but no one seems to know. No, but how common is it that a person in their 50s dies from the flu? Does that happen? I'm thinking about my father, for example. He's 74. He lives in an old people's home, and they have since this morning they've been sat in quarantine. They're not allowed to go out anymore.
Since this morning.
Since this morning, because it was a known case that somebody at an old people's home has fallen ill in COVID-19, but they don't know where. It's not where my dad lives, but they put everyone in quarantine.
I wondered about the alarming story of a perfectly healthy celebrity of 50 dying of the disease. But even just a little research threw the matter into context. According to Wikipedia, there are at any one point, and very approximately, 600,000 celebrities in the world. Indeed, they even have a table of the names of every celebrity that has died from COVID-19. It's about 900 over a period of 3 months. This works out at about 0.15%, which is not very high at all. And in fact, previous flus have carried off greater numbers of younger adults. It's interesting how when something is close to home, it hits home. But when you step back with a cool head and look at the evidence, is it really that impressive a statistic? Indeed, you could probably spin the opposite argument, that it would be a pretty poor showing by Sweden's newspaper industry not to have found any celebrity deaths at all. The truth is that celebrities are, in fact, like ordinary folk, susceptible to death. Back at the hotel, I was impressed by the manager and his wife and the quiet and efficient way they went about their business. In particular, Magnus seemed quite well informed and articulate about the crisis. He had a very real interest in how things might unfold, as his hotel had been seriously hit. Did he have anything to say about the measures the Swedes were taking, and perhaps claims that they were being reckless and irresponsible about the crisis, playing a chess game with death?
After the 15th of March, the number of guests will just go down with around 90%.
90% drop?
90% drop.
Yeah.
So it's really bad, actually.
And what happened on that date that was so important?
It was, of course, the coronavirus.
Yeah.
And the recommendation from our experts that we should not travel and we should keep the distance to each other, etc., etc. And that's why the big recommendation was to not travel.
Okay.
And of course, everyone started to work at home and nobody wanted to live at a hotel anymore.
Oh yeah, no, sure.
Of course.
Yeah. Was that an act of the Swedish Parliament, or was it a guidelines and guidance only? Did it have the force of law? And for example, do police in Sweden have the power to, detain or arrest or fine people if they don't comply with those rules?
No, it was only a recommendation from the experts in Sweden.
So it wasn't actually, it wasn't even a recommendation of the government, it was more of a recommendation from the medical experts.
Yes. Tradition is that we listen to the experts, and we use the experts when we have a crisis like this. And that's why we Swedes, we stand in line, we do what they say, and a lot of us do that.
I'm putting you on the spot a bit, but do you know how 400 years ago this change came about?
I don't know the
Well, we
name.
have to Google.
Yeah, we can Google it, but I read about it, and it's a king around 1600 century that put this like a Swedish. Do you say the ground law, the law of Sweden?
Yeah.
That's a single what do you say? A single political person cannot ask an expert to say something to media, etc., etc. Of course, the government totally can, together with the experts, go out and say something. Of course, they have the possibility, but the tradition,
free speech, isn't it?
Yes, but you cannot use experts to say what you want as a political person.
So these experts, who pays their salary?
That's the Swedish government.
So is that not therefore? It sounds great, but if the government is paying the experts, aren't they in danger of being politicised, influencing the judgments that they give?
No, I don't think so, because they are free
Free in what?
say whatever they want, and I don't think the government have any force to make them
change
say
that.
no.
Yeah,
Because there's a lot of parties in Sweden that works in a democrat.
What do you think in terms of the current crisis is going to be the impact on your business over the summer? Because I assume that during the summer months, it's high season for you here.
Yes, we are really depending on the high season in this town, and this small hotel. Of course, we need a high season. We don't know yet, but we hope that we will get at least 50% of the last year. We don't have the courage to hope for more, but of course we are glad if there will be more. But we really need that. Otherwise, it will be really, really problematic for us to survive the winter time. The recommendation from the experts is to stay that way all this year.
And do you think people are following the rules?
Yes, not everyone, but for example, my father, who just operated his heart, he's 73 years old, he stay away from everyone, and they're starting to think it's really, really boring. They usually meet their grandchildren, and they pick up my son, or usually they pick up my son and go for the sports and go out to fish in the sea. But now they don't, so they are in free will in quarantine.
Quarantine. Yeah.
Yes.
So they must really be annoyed when the sun comes out.
Yes, but they go out in the nature, of course. But they usually meet other people, and now they don't. So they are, of course, really worried about the recommendation is all 2020 until the next Christmas. It's the recommendation for the risk group.
So until December 2020.
Yes.
So they've got another 8 months of this.
Yes, the recommendation is like
that's a recommendation from the medical experts.
Yes.
It seems to me that, on the whole, I've been walking around the town. There's a sort of sensible approach. I mean, I go to the cafe and there'll be a sign on a table saying, for the sake of the current situation, we ask that you not sit on this table.
Yes.
So people are 2 tables apart.
Yes.
Have you seen any? I've been in Poland. Have you seen? The police are around quite a lot, giving out tickets.
Here?
Not here. No. But I was in Warsaw a couple of weeks ago, and I went out on a beautiful Sunday's afternoon, like today. And there were a happy couple, and the street was deserted, and they were sat on a bench. They weren't even close together. There was one, and then perhaps two chairs away, on a bench. And I watched some policemen walk by, and they had a think, and then they decided to go back, and I saw them handing out a ticket. And the fine in Warsaw for being in that situation, not even hand in hand, just a couple of feet away, sitting on a stone bench enjoying the sunshine, is up to 5,000 zloty, which is about £1,000.
Okay.
1,200 euros, which is quite a big fine. But you haven't experienced anything like that?
Not in Sweden. We don't have that at all.
Don't have that at all?
No. So it's more like you have to take your own responsibility and common sense and try to keep the distance to other people. And we have put lines in the queue in all the stores everywhere that you stay 2 meters from everyone, and we are allowed to have parties bigger than 50 people, etc., etc.
And do you actually follow those rules?
Yes.
When I see articles pop up, and I guess we're all guilty of grazing on the internet.
Yes.
I see there's a huge long list of scientists who are vigorously protesting with your top.
Yes.
Sorry, what's his name again?
Anders Tegnell.
Anders Tegnell. It's wrong, and it makes it feel, when you read it,
yes,
he's going against the whole scientific community. All is lost. But that's not right.
But of course, that's my opinion. I trust him. Actually, I really trust him.
Good. That's
and
good.
his team, of course.
Yeah, he's not a one-man band, is he? He's just at the front of a bigger operation. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for allowing me to stay here. It's a beautiful little hotel, and it is decorated to a very high standard, in traditional English style as well, I think.
Thanks a lot.
Didn't you say
it makes me glad?
No, it's really delightful. Didn't you say that some of the designs and the wallpapering and the decoration in my bedroom is...
That's a William Morris wallpaper in Europe.
A famous British...
Yes, so we have William Morris, and we have, of course, Designers Guild.
Okay.
And of course, Swedish brand as well. So we have a mixed. Every room is different.
Well, I'll have to try a different one next time.
Yes, of course.
Thank you very much, Magnus.
Thank you.
I should shake your hand.
Yes.
Thanks.
After the interview, Magnus showed me the daily stats for all deaths in Sweden on his computer, comparing it to previous years. On the 9th of April last year, there were 242 deaths, whereas this year it was 326 on that day. But then again, on 15th of April last year, there were 243 deaths, whereas on the same date this year it was 186. Clearly there were spikes and irregularities, much as you might expect. Indeed, on the 14th, 15th and 16th of April, it was quite a lot lower than the national average. All this talk of stats was beginning to make my head spin. It made me realise, though, how cleverly stats can be used to paint a picture and support an agenda. Business Insider had said that 2,000 experts were horrified at the government's course of action. But when you drilled into the details, these 2,000 experts were in fact doctors, professors and scientists. If you work out the number of just the doctors in Sweden, you discover that there are over 40,000 of them. Suddenly 2,000 is not such a big figure. The majority of the scientific, medical and academic professions were in support of the measures. Remember my analogy of the grains of sand on a beach? Not everyone was following the rules. I was appalled to later run into these two old fellows gadding about the streets in flagrant breach of the rules. We exchanged a brief conversation in two completely different languages.
Your film.
Yeah, film. Yeah, I was just making a film about Vastervik and the coronavirus. In spite of this aberration, I did find the locals pretty compliant, with sanitizer everywhere, signs on the floor in supermarkets, which people actually seem to read and obey, and empty tables between diners in restaurants. But I had more important things on my mind at that moment than a lethal global pandemic, and I quickly tired of staring at computer screens.
Corona, you mean? Or
Corona.
we haven't actually noticed it that much here. It's just like the same amount of guests, but it's just takeaway.
Yeah. Quite a few places open, but in Warsaw everything is closed. It's like a ghost town, and everyone wears masks as well.
Face masks.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I haven't seen a face mask here yet. I saw some.
Me neither.
I saw some at the ferry because there were Polish people getting off.
Yeah. I don't know. I think we are pretty chill here because we're not that many people, so it isn't that close. Like.
Is it? Is it different in Stockholm? What's Stockholm like?
Yeah, I think so. Everyone has masks or stays inside in Stockholm.
Really?
Yeah, it's. I think Stockholm is like the worst place to be. What do you say?
Yeah, it's usually the place everybody wants to go to, but right now it's
Yeah.
absolutely the worst place to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you scared of the coronavirus? Are you worried?
Nah, not me, but like for the old people, I mean.
Do you know anybody who's been ill
No.
or died?
No.
But I
I've
mean,
heard of
perhaps customers coming in, you've heard or overheard people talking
Yeah.
about it.
People talk about it, but I think it's a lot of kids like jokes about it, like, oh,
Jokes.
she has corona, I can't talk to her. I'm like, nah. I don't think it's real. They just like exaggerate and so.
Nearly 1,500 kilometres for a decent cup of coffee. That must be something of a new world record. As I walked about the streets of Vastervik enjoying the spring sunshine, having finished my business with Maria, I mulled over the trip to date. The sensible thing now would be to get promptly back on the train to Karlskrona ferry port, but I was now being drawn into what I felt was something of a mystery. Why was the rest of the world adopting such extreme measures? I felt compelled to investigate further, like a detective on leave who stumbles on a murder in a small, sleepy town and cannot drag himself away.
Yeah, we had the bird flu here. I don't know if you had it too. But we killed a lot of birds. People who were farming birds for hunt and such, they had to kill every one of the birds. Pheasants and such, you know. It was crazy.